And we are here. What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Lopes Goes Last podcast channel. I, of course, am your host, Tyler Lopes. If you have not subscribed yet, please feel free to do so. Also, hit that bell icon so you never miss any one of my videos. Also, please do like and share these videos so that we can help the podcast grow. And please follow me on Twitter at Lopes Goes Last and on Facebook at Lopes Goes Last podcast. So, if you have seen any one of the two videos that I posted already this week, this prior Tuesday and Thursday, you will know that this video is going to be mostly about MLB free agency. And I'm going to be covering everything that I deem to be important, obviously, from all the way back in November of 2021 all the way up until present day, so when I am recording this on the 18th of March. I'm obviously not going to talk about every move because there are, for those of you who do not know, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of transactions in terms of, guys being signed to minor league contracts, minor leaguers being promoted to the majors, spring training invites, everything like that. It's just crazy how many transactions happen on a daily basis in the MLB. So certainly we will not be getting into all of them, otherwise we'd be here for days. But I'm just going to be talking about all of the, what I feel at least, all of the major transactions that have happened between pretty much all of the teams in the MLB. But before I get into that, there are a couple of things in the NFL that I do want to talk about because I think they're so vitally important to the future of the NFL that I don't think that these can wait a full week, or at least certainly I don't want to wait a full week to talk about these. I feel like, by the time we would get there, the opinion certainly just, maybe not wouldn't matter necessarily, but it wouldn't matter as much, I think, with the benefit of having 8 or 9 days to really kind of look over the trade and analyze it, everything like that. So, a couple massive trades have gone down over the last couple of days since I recorded the NFL free agency video. If you have not checked that out, I worked very, very hard on that, and I'm very, very proud of it, and I think that I did about as well as I could have. I know that there were a few transactions that I missed, but obviously, that happens when you're talking about, probably, a good 60 to 75 transactions, maybe more. I didn't count them necessarily. But nonetheless, a couple of big trades that have happened over the last couple of days. First up, Davante Adams. Many who will argue that he is the best wide receiver in football over the last few years, and I agree. He definitely has the numbers to back that up. I feel that he has been the most consistent and dominant wide receiver in the NFL ever since probably around 2017, 2018, around that time when he really started breaking out. Obviously, this past season, I don't think there's even an argument to say that Cooper Kupp was not the best wide receiver in football. He certainly was the best wide receiver in football, but consistently over the last few years, I don't think there's much of an argument for anybody else. Davante Adams has been the clear-cut best wide receiver in football for the Green Bay Packers, obviously, but no longer. He has been traded to the Las Vegas Raiders for the 22nd overall pick and the 53rd overall pick in the 2022 draft, so this upcoming NFL draft in April. And also, right after the trade went down, Davante Adams signed an extension with the Las Vegas Raiders for 5 years, $141.5 million. That comes out to about $28.5 million per year, which is the highest annual value for a wide receiver ever. So he has become the highest paid wide receiver of all time. And man, what a blockbuster. I talked a little bit about Davante Adams in my last video, although you would be forgiven if you missed it. It is an hour-and-a-half long video, give or take. And Davante Adams is barely in it. I only speak about him for maybe a minute or two. Maybe not even. Maybe just a brief mention because he was franchise tagged by the Green Bay Packers. But I do believe I also mentioned that he said he was going to not play under the franchise tag. So everybody kind of assumed, well, you brought back Devondre Campbell. You brought back Preston Smith. Most importantly, you brought back Aaron Rodgers. So that probably means that you're going for another championship, so you're going to have to figure out a way to get Davante Adams on board. and really, get him to a long-term contract to stick around with Aaron Rodgers for the next few years. But I think it was pretty clear as the week went along that Davante Adams was not happy with his situation in Green Bay. Not really sure what the reason is for that. A lot of people are saying that Aaron Rodgers is difficult to work with, which I can definitely see that being a possibility. I'm not sure how much merit that has, but it is very possible, of course. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is a bit of a controversial figure. A lot of people don't like him for the way he goes about things, and certainly I can understand that sentiment. But obviously, whatever it was, Davante Adams was not happy in Green Bay for, again, whatever reason, and they were able to swing a trade for him, and it's a blockbuster. Obviously, they get a first and a second round pick in this year's upcoming draft, which now means that the Green Bay Packers have 4 draft picks in the top 60 picks. They have the 22nd pick, they have the 53rd pick, they have the 28th pick, and they have the 59th pick. So all in all, again, number 22, number 28, number 53, number 59. So definitely they are going to be able to get some talent on that team. And I will say this, my thoughts on the trade. I don't know how much Davante Adams not being happy in Green Bay had to do with this. I don't really necessarily, when I read the articles and I listen to analysts and I do all the research for this kind of stuff, I didn't really see a lot of stuff about Davante Adams being just unhappy in Green Bay in general. I did see stuff about him being unhappy playing under the franchise tag, which a lot of, prime athletes don't like playing under the franchise tag, which is fair. So I don't know how much that played into it. Now, it could have played into it a whole lot, to be fair. But to me, I think that this is another example of the Packers front office just doing Aaron Rodgers dirty. Now, I've seen some analysts say that it is Aaron Rodgers' fault that Davante Adams isn't there because, all the attention that he's brought and, all the big contract that he's now under, and he's put the team in a bad cap situation. I can understand that. That's a valid argument. However, something else that is also a valid argument is that the Packers front office has utterly refused to surround Aaron Rodgers with any kind of offensive weapons or talent other than Davante Adams, who they got, let's be honest, very lucky with. Third-round draft pick out of Fresno State. By the way, before I forget to mention it, who was his quarterback for his junior and senior seasons? Derek Carr, the quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders. So that's obviously a very nice story coming full circle. He reunites with his college quarterback, and they were very, very good together, obviously, as they're both very prominent in the NFL now. So clearly they did something right down there. But anyway, other than Davante Adams, who, again, they got very lucky. Small school wide receiver, took a few years to develop, in the third round. You're not necessarily expecting a guy like that to really develop, especially to develop into, bar none, the best wide receiver in football for a period of time. And that's happened before, obviously, with guys like Antonio Brown, who I believe was a 6th-round draft pick, 5th or 6th round, something like that. When he was drafted. So certainly, it's not unheard of necessarily for a wide receiver to be drafted later on and develop into something crazy, but you don't necessarily expect it. So they got very, very lucky with that, certainly. But other than that, they don't really necessarily have a lot of talent. Their wide receiver core was Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Allen Lazard, Amari Rodgers, and Randall Cobb. Just none of those guys really stand out to me. None of those guys really scream number 2 caliber wide receiver, and certainly not number 1 caliber wide receiver. They didn't trade. I don't know if they were in the sweepstakes again, with the cap situation, but they could have traded for somebody like an Amari Cooper. They didn't do that. They could have gone after an Allen Robinson. They didn't do that. He has, by the way, I don't think I put that in my last video because I think it happened afterwards, but he is signed with the Rams, which, my goodness, that is a scary wide receiver core that they're building over there in LA. But nonetheless, I'll talk about that next week more in depth. But, you could go after OBJ. Clearly, they're not doing that, at least not that I've heard. There's plenty of different things that you can do, and they have chose not to do that. And not only did they do that, they traded the only guy on the Packers offense that has any kind of relevance right now. Because Valdez-Scantling is a free agent, right? Equanimeous St. Brown just got signed by the Chicago Bears. So both those guys are probably gone. You can't afford to bring back Marquez Valdez-Scantling, although you might be able to now since you got that cap out, or you got out of the cap with Davante Adams. I'm not sure if that's really a good idea, though. He doesn't really stand out to me much. But then other than that, you have your top 2 wide receivers on your roster right now are Amari Rodgers and Randall Cobb. I really genuinely believe, now I could be wrong, I don't have any insider knowledge or anything like that, but I genuinely believe that if Aaron Rodgers knew that they were trading Davante Adams, he would not have gone back to Green Bay. I think he would have sprinted to Denver, and Aaron Rodgers would be the Denver quarterback right now. Honestly, I do. I think that Aaron Rodgers got fleeced. I tweeted about it last night, for those of you who saw that. I just think it's really sad. I think it's really just... it's another example of the Packers really just doing Aaron Rodgers dirty. Now, am I saying that Aaron Rodgers is blameless in all this? Absolutely not. He is as responsible for all this stuff happening as anyone else is. Do not get me wrong with that. But over the last few years, the Packers have pretty much been slated to draft a wide receiver in the first round by every mock draft over the last 4 years. What positions have they drafted? Corner, running back, quarterback, corner. You have not surrounded Aaron Rodgers with any kind of foreseeable talent except for Davante Adams. Aaron Rodgers holds out for a little while, really sits there and thinks, man, am I going to come back? Am I going to sacrifice my body, sacrifice my time? Am I going to do all that stuff for a team that I don't feel appreciates me by surrounding me with talent? Am I going to do that? Or am I going to go someplace like Denver, who is already vastly superior offensively in terms of talent than Green Bay is, even if Green Bay had Davante Adams? Do I just go there? Do I go somewhere else? Do I get traded to the New Orleans Saints, who, they don't necessarily have the most talented receiver core in the world, but they're probably going to draft a wide receiver in the first round, and also Mike Thomas is still alive. I don't really know what's going on with him necessarily, but when he plays, he's one of the top wide receivers in football for sure. So he's still there. So, maybe it's at the very least a similar situation to Green Bay, maybe without as much drama. Or do I go somewhere else? Whatever the case may be, he's sitting there, he's thinking about it, he decides, you know what, I still have the best wide receiver in football, I know the coach, I know the system, I know the city, I'm just going to sign there. And he does. And then, I don't even know how long it's been, a week, 10 days later, his only good offensive weapon, bye-bye, out the door. Come on, that's at least something, You have to at least argue that's a little bit sketch. Like, that's a little bit like the Packers they lied to him a little bit. Let's be honest with ourselves. Because according to the articles, this trade has been going on, they've thought about this for days on end. Like, it has been probably a good week since these talks have been happening, and I doubt Aaron Rodgers had any knowledge of it. Not that he necessarily has to have any knowledge of it, but I genuinely believe that he would not have signed back with the Packers had he known that this was going to happen. And let me tell you something right now. Obviously, the Green Bay Packers general manager or owner, whatever the heck your name is, you're not going to see this. But just on the off chance you do, on the 0.000000001% chance that you're going to see this, I have to say something to you. You have 4 picks in the top 60. 4. That is by far the best position draft-wise that you have been in over the last handful of seasons. Because you have not made big trades. You don't generally make big free agent signings, except for a couple of years ago. That was one of the things that Green Bay did, was they just refused to build through free agency, but then they sucked at drafting. So, that's just kind of how it went. But nonetheless, you have a golden opportunity by having picks 22, 28, 53, 59. You have 4 top 60 picks. I'm tempted to tell you, you had better go wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. Obviously that will never happen. But let's be honest with ourselves. What are you going to do at wide receiver? Tell me, What are you going to do at wide receiver, Mr. Green Bay Packers general manager / owner? Tell me what you're going to do. Because unless I'm mistaken, you have 3 wide receivers on your roster or something like that. Maybe not even. You might legit only have Randall Cobb, Amari Rodgers. I don't know. Maybe you have some guys on your practice squad or some guys I've never heard of. I don't know. But doesn't really matter. You have no talent on offense right now other than Aaron Jones. You've significantly lost pieces on your offensive line strategically over the last few seasons so that you can afford to pay guys like Devontae Adams, guys like Aaron Rodgers, guys like Devondre Campbell, guys that just you're trying to pay, and you've kept your defense going. You lost Darius Smith, but you didn't necessarily need him. He didn't play that big a role last year. But you kept Preston Smith. You kept Devondre Campbell. You kept the guys that are very important on your defense. You have great back end. You have, obviously, the corner whose name is one of my favorite players in the NFL. He's completely escaping my brain. I don't remember his name right off the top. Jair Alexander. Goodness gracious. Why am I forgetting? But you have Jair Alexander. You got great safeties. You drafted a great corner last year that actually played pretty decently well for you in Eric Stokes. So you have your defense. You've solidified that. You're good. You need to build your offense. Whether it's, honest to God, if any of the 4 picks in your draft are not wide receiver or offensive line, I'm going to scream. I'm going to scream. Because if you think you're going to win a championship with no talent at wide receiver, guess what? Aaron Rodgers isn't Tom Brady. I hate to say that, guys. He's not Tom Brady. Aaron Rodgers is not that quarterback, or at least he has not proven to be that quarterback that can go out there with no talent and win you a Super Bowl. He just has never been that quarterback throughout his entire career. He has always had decent weapons around him for the most part. This will be genuinely the first time that he does not have some kind of big play wide receiver. He had Greg Jennings. He had Devontae Adams. He had Jordy Nelson. He's had guys, even Randall Cobb in his prime was a very good wide receiver. People sometimes forget that. He's not in his prime anymore, but he's very good. So, to me, this is the first time, genuinely, that on paper you're going to go into the season with no talent at wide receiver. You have to build back that wide receiver core. If you draft, and you know what? You need offensive line too, so I can understand you don't want to use all 4 of those top 60 picks. Those top 60 picks to draft all wide receivers. I get that. That's silly. That's obviously silly. You shouldn't do that. Although, I wouldn't blame you if you did. But if you draft another defensive back or a defensive tackle, I'm going to scream with any of those 6. I don't care. And in the 3rd round, you should probably draft Trey McBride. Probably the best tight end in the draft. You're probably not going to get him until the 3rd round. You shouldn't have to get him until the 3rd round, probably, at least unless something changes. But you should be able to get somebody like that in the 3rd round. Build your tight end room, too. Like, my goodness, I'm losing it here. I'm very passionate about it, but it drives me nuts when general managers do this. They use a guy like a Devontae Adams. Say you're never going to find somebody that's as talented as Devontae Adams that you have such a rapport with. So come back. And obviously that's not the only reason Aaron Rodgers came back, but it's probably part of it. It's a big part of it, I'm sure. And then a week later he's gone. And Aaron Rodgers now has to sit there and go, man, I shouldn't have come back. I shouldn't have come back. This really strikes a blow. Now, did Aaron Rodgers know this was going to happen? Maybe, but there's been no evidence to support that. Aaron Rodgers hasn't come out and said anything as far as I know. He hasn't, said that he knew about it or didn't know about it. That might come out in the next couple days. I'm not sure. But nonetheless, that's the first thing that happened. And I know I said this is going to be mostly MLB stuff, and it is. Just bear with me. But right now I have a couple more, one more NFL thing that I have to get into. And the other thing is Deshaun Watson. So this happened earlier today. Deshaun Watson, he was traded. And earlier in my last video, I reported that the Browns were out. They were not, evidently, because that's where he went. Deshaun Watson just today gets traded to the Cleveland Browns. Now, the final details of the trade have not been released yet, although it is believed to be 3 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and a fifth-round pick. I'm not sure what years that third and the fifth will be in, but right now, obviously, the Cleveland Browns going absolutely all in, and one person that was not in the trade was one Baker Mayfield, as far as I read. Which is interesting because one of the things that also happened yesterday was that Baker Mayfield, realizing the writing on the wall that the Browns met with Deshaun Watson and his agent and everything like that. Obviously, the Browns are not happy with Baker Mayfield. He kind of understood that and asked to be traded. But interestingly enough, the Browns said, no, we are not trading you. Will they trade him now? I sure hope so. I really hope that Baker Mayfield does not just ride the bench all year. Maybe the Browns have the mindset of, well, you never really know what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson. He might have lost a step. He might have this. He might have that, blah, blah, blah. Although clearly they don't believe that because also they signed Deshaun Watson, and I have never seen a contract like this in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes' contract is a complete outlier, of course, because it's so much more than every other contract. But check this out. 5 years, $230 million, fully guaranteed. I have never seen a contract that's fully guaranteed in the NFL that's that large. Not to my memory. If any of you guys have, can look that up and find a contract that's like that I don't remember. It might have been a prominent quarterback or anything like that. I don't really remember. But to me, in my memory, I have never seen a contract that has that much guaranteed money. I mean, fully guaranteed at $230, you are completely betting on the fact that, one, Deshaun Watson's legal troubles are completely behind him, which that's never a guarantee. 2, that Deshaun Watson is exactly who you think he is, which is the guy that did not commit all those crimes, which, again, not a guarantee. And 3, that he has in no way, shape, or form lost a step over the last year plus that he has been away from football. That is a big gamble to take. Now, obviously, if it works, you just have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL that's only 25 or 26 years old under a 5-year contract in his prime. And quite frankly, I love this for Cleveland. And the reason, if anything, is because a quarterback finally chose Cleveland. I mean, think about a few years ago. We were sitting there, we were putting on these big jerseys that had like 150 names of all the QBs that have played for the Browns over the last 20 years or something like that. And it was 40 names. It was just ridiculous. There's that picture of that woman that has all the names crossed out of the same number, just kind of going all the way down. And that was all the quarterbacks. But now a quarterback chose a prime, fantastic, young, controllable, dominant quarterback when he has played. Just chose out of every team he could have gone to, out of Seattle, out of Carolina, out of New Orleans, out of Atlanta. He didn't choose to go to any of those big cities. He chose to go to Cleveland. He chose to go to Cleveland, which, again, I have not seen in my lifetime a quarterback choose of that level. I'm not going to say no quarterback has chosen to go to Cleveland, but a quarterback of that level choosing to go to Cleveland. There was a time where if you got traded to Cleveland, that was a death sentence for you in your career. That was a death sentence for you in your career. I'll tell you guys a quick story before I get into the MLB stuff. Jamie Collins, you guys remember him? I talked about him last video just a little bit. Linebacker for the New England Patriots for a long time. He was a second-round draft pick, ended up developing into a very nice young linebacker. Although when he was, after a few years, his production started to slip a little bit. He started to be late to some meetings. He started to kind of rub people the wrong way in New England. You guys know how New England does it. They are very, very strict on things. They have their one way, and if you don't follow that way, you're out the door. It doesn't matter how talented you are. Now, Jamie Collins evidently complained about his role on the team. A couple weeks later, this is in the middle of the season. A couple weeks later, he was traded to Cleveland. The first thing that everybody said was that Bill Belichick sent Jamie Collins a message with that trade saying, oh yeah, you're unhappy with your situation here in always winning New England? Let's see how you feel in Cleveland. Jamie Collins is a part of the 0-16 Cleveland Browns. He was a part of the Cleveland Browns when they won 2 games in 3 years. So, this is not too long ago. This is 5-6 years ago. that we're talking about this team is not only not a good team. If you go there, your career's over. You're not going to shine. You're not going to be a good player. You're not going to make the Pro Bowl. You're not going to this, and you're certainly not going to win any games. Deshaun Watson chose that place, and I think that's something to celebrate, just as a sports fan in general, that the Browns now are at least relevant enough to have a guy like Deshaun Watson choose to go there, especially when he was being touted by a lot of teams. I'm sure Seattle put their name in the hat. I'm sure that was tempting to go play with DK, go play with Tyler Lockett, go play with Pete Carroll, take over for Russell Wilson. They're both very similar players. Deshaun Watson's not as much of a runner as Russell Wilson was in his prime, but certainly athletic enough and certainly has a similar kind of arm talent, similar just kind of way he plays the game, similar mindset. So it would have made a lot of sense. Obviously, New Orleans, Deshaun Watson really could be the guy that takes, essentially takes the reins from Drew Brees. I know it was supposed to be Jameis Winston last year, and Jameis Winston did a pretty good job before he ended up getting hurt, but nonetheless, basically could have been like a Mac Jones in New England situation where, yeah, we had the year with Cam, but Mac Jones is really taking over for Tom Brady, let's be honest. So it could have been the same thing. He could have gone to Atlanta. Atlanta is a fantastic city. I've spent a lot of time in Atlanta. I'm going to spend a lot more time in Atlanta over the next few months, I hope. So certainly, it's a fantastic city. The Falcons are a great organization, albeit troubled at times in terms of, not really winning a lot of games and, blowing a lot of chances with good teams. Sorry to remind my Atlanta fans of that. But, Deshaun Watson, going to Atlanta, that would have changed the whole game. That would have changed everything. They would have gone from having a 36-year-old quarterback that's on his last leg in terms of his career that has a $40 million cap hit to Deshaun Watson. Like, that's a huge jump. But he didn't choose any of those places. He chose Cleveland. I think that's something to celebrate. Now, in terms of the actual trade itself, I've seen a lot of negative articles about this trade already. A lot of people saying that this is a stain on the NFL because of what Deshaun Watson has done. Because of all of the things that Deshaun Watson has gone through in terms of the sexual assault accusations and all of that stuff. Now, obviously, all of that stuff is horrible. And if he ever did those things, I hope it comes to light and I hope that he gets punished in a way that is just and fair. However, I will say this. In today's society, it always seems like instead of it being innocent until proven guilty, you are guilty until proven innocent. And even if you are proven innocent, that stain of once people thinking you were guilty never really rubs off, does it? I mean, it does in some instances, but a lot of times it really doesn't. He went through the legal process. He wasn't indicted. So as far as I personally am concerned, unless there's something else that comes out, unless there's more lawsuits where more evidence comes out, I think that we should all try and put it behind us. That might be an unpopular opinion to some. I understand completely. And I, by no means, I want you guys to hear this clearly, I by no means am saying that Deshaun Watson never did those things, for sure, because I don't know that. And also, I'm not trying to underplay the seriousness and the horror of sexual assault and rape victims. I am by no means saying any of those things. But he did go through the legal process. You can't say he didn't go through it. He did. He was not indicted. And that's just the way it was. Now, you can say that it's because he's a prominent athlete. You can say this, you can say that. I completely understand that argument. It has happened before. And I don't know if that's the reason. I really don't. But as far as I'm concerned, we should at least, unless, again, more evidence comes out and more lawsuits come, we should try and put it behind us. Because if he didn't do those things, let's look at the resume of Deshaun Watson. He's always been considered a very stand-up human being. Humble, hardworking, kind, and a good leader. He's always been considered that by almost, if not all, of his teammates and coaches. Go check out what Dabo Swinney has said about Deshaun Watson. He was around him every day in college. Check out what his teammates in Houston have said about him in the past. Check out what happened a few years ago when the Houston Texans pretty much gave up like halfway through the season and just stopped trying. J.J. Watt, who we all respect as NFL fans, as a leader, as a man, and as a competitor. That man works harder than most people on the planet. He went to Deshaun Watson and apologized because he knew that Deshaun Watson was the leader he was meant to be. And he was let down by those guys just as much as JJ was. That is a huge endorsement from somebody like JJ Watt. So to me, with all of this, sexual assault stuff, presumably in the past, again, you never know what's going to come out in the future. But right now, he went through the legal process, he was not indicted, and that's that to me. Now it's about judging him on his other stuff. And all the other stuff points that he's a fantastic human. So that's what I'm going to judge him on until I'm proven otherwise. And this is a little bit more patriotic than I'm sure you guys have probably thought it was going to be. But again, in this country, in the great country of the United States of America, we are innocent until proven guilty, not the other way around. So as far as I'm concerned, Deshaun Watson, in my book, is innocent until somebody shows me he isn't. And let me tell you this, if he is proven to be guilty, I will be the first one to apologize for what I'm saying right now, tell you that I was wrong, and scream and shout and tell you how bad of a person Deshaun Watson was. I will be the first person to do that. Trust me. But right now, I see no reason to do that, and I think that he should just go back to focusing on what he's really good at, which is football, because let me tell you, he is phenomenal, in case anybody's forgotten. Okay. Now, with all of that, let's jump into the MLB free agency. I know that's why you guys are here. I am very sorry for such a long, kind of winding thing, but those are two such important stories. I had to talk about them right away. I did not want to wait a week. So, how this is going to work. Again, like I said at the beginning of the video, or at least I believe I said at the beginning of the video, I am going through all of the MLB transactions that I deem to be important from November 2021 all the way until present day. So, obviously, there have been a plenty of them, and I am just kind of looking to make sure that everything is in place, and it is. So, here's what's going to happen. I didn't really know how I was going to do this necessarily as the week went on. I kind of decided last minute. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go team by team, but also try and do it in somewhat of a chronological order. But obviously, some teams made big transactions in November and then also big transactions in March. Those will be lumped together. But for the most part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go about it like team by team so that I'm not jumping all around so you guys can, maybe hopefully more easily keep track of who went where and who sent people where and all that stuff. So, also, because there are so many transactions, I am not going to talk about the contract length or the contract amount for these players unless it is for a specific reason. For instance, I'm going to talk about Wander Franco's contract. It was a record-breaking contract. I will give you the specifics of that contract. I will give you, obviously, the combination of the money between Corey Seager and Marcus Semien, because I think that it's kind of a nice way of showing you how much the Texas Rangers are investing in these two players at the same time in their infield. So I think it's a good illustration. But other than things like that, if it's just a random bullpen pitcher being signed, like a 32-year-old bullpen pitcher for like a year, I don't really see the reason to tell you that it was a $2 million contract or something like that. The most important thing is that you know where all these players are going to be this year, so that's what I'm going to do. Hopefully that's all right with you guys. All right. With that, I also want to let you know that there are a few teams that I'm not going to really speak about because they didn't really do much of importance. A team like the Arizona Diamondbacks, they didn't really sign anybody of that much importance. Obviously, a team like the Baltimore Orioles also didn't really sign anybody of that much importance. The Cleveland Guardians didn't really sign anybody of that much importance. So teams like that I won't be mentioning. I believe I'm talking about 26 or 27 of the teams. And there are a couple of teams that I'm not going to talk about their signings, but that did trade away players. Obviously, a team like the Padres, although I will mention that they did trade for Luke Voit. Spoiler. But yeah, so different things like that. If you are a fan of those teams, I'm sorry, but to me, you didn't really sign anybody of that much importance, unless, of course, I missed it. There are a lot of transactions that have happened, and it is very easy to kind of get lost in all of that. So if there is a player that I missed that is very important, please feel free to put that in the comments section, and I will address you as soon as I can. But nonetheless, all right, with that, here we go. So we're starting off with a big one. The Seattle Mariners signed Cy Young Award winner Robbie Ray. Huge signing for the Mariners. The Mariners really started to go all in this offseason, and I absolutely love it. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the trades that happened when I talk about the Reds also. But the Mariners really going all in as far as I'm concerned, signing the Cy Young Award winner Robbie Ray, which, by the way, still really weird to say that Robbie Ray was a Cy Young Award winner. Just would not have guessed that at the beginning of the season. But nonetheless, super awesome. The Mariners definitely need more pitching, need some more pitching help out there, but definitely a good start to the offseason for them. The Detroit Tigers had a big offseason as well. They signed pitcher Eduardo Rodriguez, shortstop Javier Baez, and pitcher Andrew Chafin. So certainly a big offseason for them. Erod, obviously I know a lot about Erod. I've watched him for the last few years. I will say at the time I wasn't sure that he was worth the contract that they gave him. But obviously if you're going to give a controllable contract to a pitcher, I'd rather see you have a pitcher that's reasonably young, has stayed reasonably healthy other than the one season that he had some heart problems because of COVID. He's been pretty decently consistent in terms of just going out there and eating up innings. Although I will say, Erod's not going to be that guy that's going to give you 7 or 8 innings every single night. He's not going to be that guy that's going to, have a 3.1 ERA. He's going to have an ERA in the high 3s, low 4s, maybe even mid 4s. He's not going to be that guy other than that one season, I think in 2019, 2018, where he had 19 wins. That was an outlier because he had the second most runs per 9 innings, I think, in history. For a pitcher, something like that. It was an absolutely crazy stat that the Red Sox were putting up like 8 runs a night when he was pitching. So it just, he's not going to be a guy that's going to win 20 games for you. At least he hasn't shown that yet. So we'll see how that develops. And obviously Javier Baez, you guys that know me know I love Javier Baez. I have said pretty controversially in the past, and I'm going to put it out there on the internet because why not? I like the hate mail. No. But I would rather have Javier Baez on my team than I would Chris Bryant. I just think that Javier Baez is a little bit less of a troublemaker. Not necessarily troublemaker, not to say that Chris Bryant's a troublemaker, that's not the right word, but, Chris Bryant's gone through, he's sued the MLB, and, it's just been a whole deal, and he's one of the most inconsistent studs that I've ever seen. And Javier Baez, you pretty much know what you're going to get out of him. He's going to play good defense, he's going to strike out a ton, but he's also going to have good power, and he's just a great leader. He's very emotional. He plays with a lot of guts, plays with a lot of heart, plays with a lot of passion. And I would much rather have a guy like that on my team. So great signing, I think, for Detroit. They finally get a big bat in that lineup. They've really struggled to get big bats in that lineup over the last few years, other than Miguel Cabrera, of course, but he's obviously very up there in age. And then obviously a nice other piece in Andrew Chafin. Not really much to say about that, just another depth signing for them. All right. On to the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Pirates traded catcher Jacob Stallings to Miami for a package of prospects. They also signed Roberto Perez, assumingly to replace Jacob Stallings. They also signed first baseman Daniel Vogelbach and pitcher Heath Hembree. Not much really to say about these. Stallings I like. I think that he's a pretty good catcher. I also like Roberto Perez as well. I think Stallings is a little bit better, but obviously the Pittsburgh Pirates are just, I don't think it's really a surprise to say they're not great. I think they also designated Colin Moran for assignment at one point. I'm not sure where that stands right now, but Colin, if that's the case, then I'm not sure how much talent they necessarily have. I love O'Neal Cruz. Hopefully he steps up this year and really plays well. I think he's certainly going to get Rookie of the Year consideration if he plays up to his potential. Might even win it if he plays up to his potential, but nonetheless, by the way, especially with the DH now, because he's not the greatest defender in the world. But, we'll see how that goes. But nonetheless, just kind of some moderate signings for the Pirates. I don't expect them to make any big splashes in free agency, and neither should any of you. White Sox, they also had a pretty big offseason. They signed pitchers Vince Velasquez. They signed Joe Kelly. For 2 years. They signed Kendall Graveman for 3 years. That was a big signing for them. And then they also signed infielder I almost said Josh Richardson. That is a basketball player. Josh Harrison. To a contract. So, nothing really super splashy. Kendall Graveman, obviously, is probably your most splashy free agent pickup there. Great reliever, pitched really well for Seattle and Houston last year. Just certainly another great pickup for that bullpen. That bullpen in Chicago is starting to get pretty filthy. Liam Hendricks, Craig Kimbrell, Kendall Graveman, Joe Kelly, Michael Kopech. You've got plenty of guys in that pen that can really bring it. So it's going to be very exciting to watch. And then obviously Josh Harrison is one of those guys that, he's been a journeyman. He's been all around the last few years. Obviously made a name for himself in Pittsburgh. And then he's kind of bounced around since he left there. Hasn't really found a home. But when he does play, you know what you're going to get from him. You're going to get some speed. He'll get on base a little bit. Not much power. But, he's a good locker room leader. So certainly not a bad depth pickup there. And then obviously Vince Velasquez, just some depth at pitching there. Maybe could make some spot starts if there's some injuries. Maybe could even slide into the starting rotation if stuff happens. So who knows? But nonetheless, Texas Rangers, another team that had a huge offseason. So the Texas Rangers, they signed shortstop Corey Seager to a 10-year, $325 million deal. And also they signed shortstops / second baseman, which is probably second base is probably where he's going to play, Marcus Semien to a 7-year, $175 million contract. They also signed outfielder Cole Calhoun, which I think is an underrated pickup as well. Huge offseason for the Texas Rangers. Definitely puts them into a spot where they may even, especially with the expanded playoff, they might be able to sneak into one of those wild card spots that has been expanded into this year. But, certainly two great moves. Obviously, they might have the best middle infield in baseball now. Two guys that are, obviously, Marcus Semien's gotten MVP votes the last few years. Had a phenomenal year. Had over 40 home runs for the Blue Jays last year, and everybody knows how good Corey Seager is. If that guy can stay healthy, he's one of the top young shortstops in baseball, but he just has not been able to stay healthy over the last few years. Hopefully that turns around now that he's out of LA, but we will see how that goes. And then obviously, as I said, Cole Calhoun, pretty decent signing, obviously. It's not going to be a world-beating signing, but when he stays healthy, he's a good power hitter, and he plays good defense, has a good arm. Certainly a good signing for them all around. The Tampa Bay Rays, they re-signed shortstop Wander Franco, the Wonder Kid, to an absolutely record-shattering 11-year, $182 million extension with a 12th-year team option that is worth an additional $41 million at the end of it. So that will total the contract to 12 years, $223 million should that option be recognized. Wow. I mean, surprising, awesome, crazy. I mean, every emotion that you can think of, that's what this signing is. The Rays have never spent this kind of money on a player, not even close. But if you kind of break it down, that's not that much annual value. I mean, you got guys making $35, $40 million. You break this down, it's about, what's that? $16 million a year, $18 million a year. If it gets to the, if it gets to the 12th year option, it's obviously going to be a little bit more than that. But man, what a signing for the Rays. And obviously, a guy like Wander Franco, we haven't seen a rookie play like that in a while. I mean, even a guy like Mike Trout, his rookie season, he came up and didn't really play all that well. But Wander Franco came up and he showed out. He was hitting home runs in the playoffs. He was playing above his age, and he was playing like a veteran. So certainly a great signing for them, or a re-signing, I should say. And hopefully he develops into what they think he's going to be, because Wander Franco, honest to God, has the chance to be one of the top 3 players in the MLB if he develops into what we think he can. So good for the Rays. Super happy for them. Obviously, being in the division, I'm not looking forward to seeing Wander Franco play against us for 10 years. But obviously, I mean, I'm just happy for the Rays. I mean, they never spend money like this. They never do that. And I've always just kind of wanted to see them do it. And they finally did that. And they chose the right guy to do it for. I joked around a lot saying, I hope you Rays fans enjoy Wander Franco, because in 3 years he's going to be traded. Because that's basically what happens with the Rays. You're good, you get traded. You're good, you get traded. That's just how it works. But not Wander Franco. He's the exception to the rule, and I think he deserves it. Dodgers, they had a decent offseason as well. Just decent, you know. They re-signed Chris Taylor. They also re-signed Clayton Kershaw. They also signed pitcher Daniel Hudson. But the biggest free agent acquisition, possibly of any team this offseason, was the addition of first baseman Freddie Freeman, who left the Braves after spending his whole career there. Obviously, for my Braves fans, if you guys watched the podcast with me and Ryan Bruce and Andy Riley, first of all, again, so much fun doing that. I hope to have them on here again soon. But nonetheless, they obviously both had different opinions on whether they needed Freddie Freeman. And crazy enough, shout out to Ryan Bruce. You got it exactly right. Freddie Freeman leaving, trading for Matt Olson. Spoiler, you got it exactly right. So good on you, Brucey. I'll shout you out right now. Hopefully you're watching. But nonetheless, crazy. Freddie Freeman was one of those guys. I thought he was going to be the exception to the rule, one of those guys that stays in one place for his whole career. Obviously, it didn't happen, so that's really sad. I kind of wanted to see him stay, but the Dodgers, I know that they're the Dodgers, but how do they have this much money, man? Like, they are just blowing through that luxury tax. It's crazy that I haven't looked to see what their final lineup is going to be, because without Corey Seager, obviously things change a little bit, but wow. I mean, that team is absolutely stacked. I mean, maybe what you do is you move like a Max Muncy to third, or maybe you keep Justin Turner around. I don't know. I think he might still be a free agent. I don't really remember, but you might move Max Muncy to second, put Gavin Lux at short. Obviously, you have Will Smith behind the plate, maybe Justin Turner at third, Chris Taylor in the outfield, Mookie Betts in the outfield, Cody Bellinger in the outfield, and then you get a DH. I don't know who you would get as a DH, but wow. Maybe even put Justin Turner as a DH and find a more defensive-minded third baseman. I don't know. But wow. Just wow. I mean, that's a big, big signing for them, obviously. Freddie Freeman clearly makes that lineup even better than it was, and it was already arguably the most dangerous lineup in the game. So absolutely crazy. And obviously bringing Kershaw back, bringing Chris Taylor back. I'm actually a little surprised they brought Chris Taylor back. I figured that he would price himself out, but didn't happen. And then Daniel Hudson, a nice bullpen piece for them. Obviously, probably one of the Achilles heels for the Dodgers has been their bullpen over the last few years. I think it's probably their weakest part of their game. Their starters are unbelievable. Obviously, the lineup is unbelievable. I think their weakest link is probably their bullpen, although they have some great pieces out there. Don't get me wrong. Kenley Jansen, Blake Trinan, Brusdar Graterol, or however you pronounce it. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, but you get the point. They have a lot of weapons out there already. Not to say that they have a bad bullpen, of course. They have a good one, but just probably their weakest. So getting a guy like Daniel Hudson, never a bad thing. All right. The Mets, also big offseason. They signed Max Scherzer. They also signed third baseman Eduardo Escobar. They also signed outfielders Starling Marte and Mark Canha. So certainly a good haul in this offseason for them. They did lose Marcus Stroman, obviously, but certainly replacing him with Max Scherzer, great. And they also lost Noah Syndergaard as well. Noah Syndergaard did sign with the Angels as well, which I will get into in a little bit. But nonetheless, certainly just an amazing offseason for the Mets as well. There's been a lot of teams that have really had great offseasons, and I feel like I'm kind of going through all the good ones first. I didn't really realize that when I wrote this, which is unfortunate, because then it's just going to kind of go at the end, but it's fine. So yeah, Mets, great job. Eduardo Escobar, I think, is still very underrated. I think he's a great player, but he was out there in Arizona, and they don't really get a lot of primetime attention. So certainly I think that's a great signing for them. He's going to do a lot of things well for them. He plays multiple positions, so certainly will help them out. Starling Marte, great player. Getting up there in age, a little less effective than he used to be, and there's obviously some injury concerns there, but certainly great player as well. They needed to replace Michael Conforto, and they did with Starling Marte. And then obviously Mark Canha. My guess is he'll probably kind of slot into a DH role. If not, then he might play outfield and first base sometimes. It might be a platoon with Dominic Smith, depending on how things go. Sometimes one might be the DH, other might play first, maybe want to play outfield, maybe, you never really know. But certainly Mark Canha, good power bat for them in that lineup as well. Atlanta Braves. Obviously, they lost Freddie Freeman, but they certainly did not have a bad offseason. They traded for first baseman Matt Olson for a package including Christian Pash and catcher Shea Langeliers. They also then immediately extended Matt Olson for 8 years and $168 million. They also re-signed postseason hero Eddie Rosario, and they signed pitcher Colin McHugh. So, Braves, you lost Freddie Freeman. Obviously, that's wicked sad. But you replaced him with a guy who's younger, he's from Atlanta, he's a little bit cheaper, and he's almost as good. I'm not going to say he's as good as Freddie Freeman, but he's almost as good. He's also a left-handed power bat, which is what you guys need. So certainly, man, what a job by you guys. Shea Langeliers, funny story about Shea Langeliers, or Shea Langeliers. I'm not sure how that's pronounced. Again, I apologize if I mispronounce that, but I think it's Langeliers now that I think about it. I could be wrong. I'm just going to say Langeliers, and if I'm wrong, somebody will yell at me. But Langeliers, I didn't know that he existed. I didn't know that he was a real person. And then one day I was playing the show, and I opened up the Braves roster. I was doing a rebuild, and then I saw a guy with that name, and he was really good. He was like a 79 overall, still in the minors, and I'm like, who the heck is Shea Langeliers? Who is this guy? Is he real? And then I looked him up, and sure enough, he was real. And I'm like, wow, this guy's going to be a stud maybe. Now, obviously, we'll never know if he will be a stud for the Braves because he will be playing for the Athletics for the next few years, presumably anyway. Maybe Sean Ryan Murphy, might have to watch out in the next couple of years, so you never know. But again, great trade for the Braves, getting a guy as talented as Matt Olson. Obviously, he's not going to be the same as Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman was as much an emotional and maybe even spiritual, if that makes any sense, leader, like just almost his presence for the Braves than he was a physical leader on the field. He was just as much of both. And obviously Matt Olson will probably not be able to fill the shoes of leadership that Freddie Freeman had, but certainly if you're going to replace talent for talent, you probably couldn't have done much better than Matt Olson. So good job for the Braves. The Cubs, they signed Japanese free agent, and again, I am probably going to botch this, Seiya Suzuki for 5 years, $85 million, which makes it the largest contract for an international free agent in history. So great job. Good for that guy. They also signed catcher Yan Gomes and pitcher Marcus Stroman, as well as David Robertson. So a few good signings for the Cubs, and they certainly, they are in rebuild mode, but that does not mean that they are not going to spend money. That does not mean they're not going to bring in some star power. So good for the Cubs, kind of really hitting the reset button last year, trading away pretty much everyone. They still do have Wilson Contreras. So they still have Ian Happ. They still have a couple of good players there. So we will see how that develops over the next few years. But great signings. We'll see how Suzuki develops. I think that oftentimes when you have signings like this, and you've got somebody like a Shohei Ohtani that signed for less, people will go, oh, well, then he's probably going to be better than Shohei Ohtani. Doubtful. I mean, let's be honest. Very doubtful that he'll be better than Shohei Ohtani. But I still think that he will develop very well. I think that he's going to be a good player. And hopefully, on a team like the Cubs where, there's not a crazy amount of talent and star power, that he can really develop into being a mainstay star for the Cubs. But we will have to see. The LA Angels, like I said, they signed pitcher Noah Syndergaard. They also signed Michael Lorenzen, and they signed catcher Kurt Suzuki. So not flashy signings by any means, other than Noah Syndergaard, of course. I'm just glad that they brought in a big name pitcher. I will say they probably overpaid a little bit for Noah Syndergaard, especially coming off of a major injury that ended up costing him almost his entire season when it really wasn't supposed to. Last year was one of those years where I just got unbelievably unlucky with pitchers in my fantasy draft. I drafted Mike Soroka, and I drafted Noah Syndergaard for, a big boost in June, and of course, both of them never played. Noah Syndergaard did come back like with a few games left to be a reliever, but that doesn't count to me. Fantasy-wise. So certainly that was unlucky. So certainly Syndergaard had a long, hard road to recovery. So hopefully that he will, be able to get the zip on that fastball. We were touching triple digits. All the movement on his sinker and his just filthy off-speed stuff. If it does work out for the Angels, they certainly got a guy that's going to help out that rotation and possibly be an ace for them on top of Shohei Ohtani. But other than that, we will see. And then Michael Lorenzen, a good piece for their bullpen. Obviously, they also re-signed Raisel Iglesias in the offseason. Again, a really, really nice offseason for them. And then Kurt Suzuki, a guy, just a veteran guy to come in there and be a leader at the backstop position. So good offseason so far for the Angels. They still certainly need some more pitching, but we will see how that develops. The Marlins, they signed outfielder Avisail Garcia, and they also traded catcher Jorge Alvarado Jorge Alfaro to the Padres, and they also traded for second baseman Joey Wendell. So, interesting offseason for the Marlins. They didn't really necessarily do a bunch of flashy things, but Avisail Garcia is a good signing for them. He'll definitely anchor the power, the middle of the order for the next couple of years for them. And then Jorge Alfaro getting traded. Obviously, we talked about the fact that they traded for Jacob Stallings from Pirates earlier. So Stallings will step in and be the catcher, so they didn't have any need for Alfaro, obviously. Obviously, they are building a really nice young pitching staff. I think the Marlins might have a very sneaky... they might even have a top 5 starting rotation. It is very, very sneaky, and if Jesus Luzardo can figure it out this year, I think that starting rotation is going to be very, very, very dangerous with Zach Gallen, obviously with Jesus Luzardo, with Pablo Lopez, with Sandy Alcantara. So certainly that will be a dangerous rotation to face every day. The Reds. I'm going to try and be nice on this one. I don't know how much it'll work, but I'm going to try and be nice. The Reds, they traded a lot of their players away. And they did not really sign anybody to replace them, as far as I saw. They traded Sonny Gray to the Twins for and another minor league pitcher. They did get Chase Petty, who was the 2021 first-round pick of the Minnesota Twins, in return. So another good young pitcher to help develop in their minor league system. They also traded away Eugenio Suarez and Jesse Winker to the Seattle Mariners. So obviously I talked about the Mariners having a big offseason. They signed Robbie Ray. They also traded for Jesse Winker and Eugenio Suarez. So Eugenio Suarez figures to slide right into the third base spot that was vacated by the retiring Kyle Seager. And then obviously Jesse Winker will go out there and play outfield for them and possibly DH sometimes. He has been the most underrated hitter in baseball. He's been absolutely tearing the cover off the ball the last 2 years, and no one talks about it. At one point, I think before he got injured, I honestly would have given him some MVP votes. He was absolutely ripping the cover off the ball for the Reds last year before he got injured and ended up missing a couple of months. But injury concerns is always a concern with Jesse Winker, with Eugenio Suarez. And Eugenio Suarez, I still think that he has a chance to be one of the better third baseman in baseball. He's just, he's never been a batting average guy. He's always been a power guy. And I think with everything that happened with, the baseballs last year and, pitching being so dominant, his batting average, I haven't looked at the stats, but I don't even think he got back up to a 200 batting average. He might have barely by the end of the season. I don't really know. But for a long, long time last year, he was not even hitting 200. But the power was still there. The extra base hits were still there. It's just the batting average and the on-base percentage wasn't there. So, I'm guessing that those are going to come up at least a little bit this year. I don't anticipate him hitting 190 again. But you never know. It could happen, but I think that just to have him as basically a throw-in in the trade, I think that was a great pickup for the Mariners. We will see how that develops. But for the Reds, again, I said I'm going to try to be nice. So I'm simply going to just kind of ask what you're doing. Because a big part of the CBA this year was anti-tanking measures. And as soon as the CBA signed, you trade away all of your good players except for Joey Votto, or at least most of your good players except for Joey Votto. Nick Castellanos isn't there anymore. You know, you had 2 all-star outfielders last year, and you shipped them out the next year, both of them. And Nick Castellanos probably ain't going back to the Reds. He hasn't been signed as of yet. But obviously, like I did last video, I will check my phone at the end of this to make sure that there's no other signings that I missed. So the Reds, what are you doing? Again, I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to understand. What are you doing? What are you doing? I'll leave it at that. The Royals, another trade that the Reds made. They traded Amir Garrett as well, but they got Mike Minor in return, who's a decent starter. So I don't hate that move as much because I feel like they at least got something of worth back. But for the Royals, I think they still won that trade. I like Amir Garrett. I think he still has potential to be a late inning guy. I'm not sure that he ever will be again. And obviously, I'm just a fan of Amir Garrett because he's not afraid to be very eccentric. He's gotten into plenty of fights. So that's always entertaining. But certainly, I like Amir Garrett. I think that the Royals did well in that trade. They obviously, they're still rebuilding as well. So we will see. Oh, and by the way, I meant to mention this earlier with the Tigers. They're really building a special lineup in there. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to sign a Nick Castellanos. He was originally there in Detroit for a while. He didn't really like it necessarily. For those of you who remember him talking about how big the park was and how big Comerica was and just how, he felt like he got robbed of so many home runs there. But, nonetheless, they could sign somebody like that. They could sign another big free agent. Who knows? And obviously you've got, a guy like Spencer Torkelton who will come up probably this year. Riley Green who might come up this year. 2 of the top prospects in baseball. That lineup is going to start to look pretty potent over the next couple of years. So I did mean to talk about that earlier, but we will see. All right. Where am I now? So the Yankees. On to the Yankees. They re-signed Anthony Rizzo. So that's a good move for them, obviously. They also traded catcher Gary Sanchez and third baseman / utility Gio Urshela to the Minnesota Twins for third baseman Josh Donaldson, as well as shortstop / catcher Isaiah Kiner-Falefa and catcher Ben Rortved. I don't know if that is how you pronounce it. And then obviously I meant to put this with the Texas Rangers, but they also traded Isaiah Kiner-Falefa away. So obviously he does not play for them anymore. And for some reason I am completely and utterly blanking on who they got in return. I'm very sorry. So nonetheless, back to this trade. Josh Donaldson and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, 2 good pieces for the Yankees, obviously, and then re-signing Anthony Rizzo. I think of that lineup, it's obviously been very potent every year. And then Ben Rortved, I think he's probably going to end up platooning with Kyle Higashioka. I think that's where he is slated to kind of help the team out there. So that's another nice pickup for them. And then obviously getting rid of Gary Sanchez. Man, what a disaster for the Yankees. Not the getting rid of him part, but the fact that he ever played for them part. It feels like another lifetime ago that Gary Sanchez almost won Rookie of the Year by playing like 60 games. Like he was just absolutely ripping the cover off the ball, and then obviously, people scouted it. He had a hole in his swing, and now he can't even hit 200. So, it's just, man, what a disaster. And obviously, a guy like that, he can't play defense, so he needs to hit, and then when he doesn't hit, it's like, why is he even out there? So, obviously, the Yankees probably got sick of it, traded him away. Okay, I do have the, by the way, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa trade right down here. The Twins traded Mitch Garver to the Texas Rangers for shortstop / catcher Isaiah Kiner-Falefa and a minor league pitcher. So, the Texas Rangers also picked up Mitch Garver this season. So, there you go. Yeah. So, that is the other trade that's, I did have it written down. I just didn't see it, so I apologize. Again, Guys, it has been a crazy week. There's been hundreds and hundreds of transactions for both sports that I've had to keep up with. I do apologize for messing a couple of them up, but please try to understand that my brain is absolutely full of all of this stuff. And plus, work is also, I'm learning a lot of things at work as well. I'm training for a lot of things. So, my brain's been pretty much filled to the brim over the last week. So do forgive me for these a little bit of lapses here. But nonetheless, again, going back to the Josh Donaldson and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa trade, I think that Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, he probably will slot in and play shortstop a lot for them. And then obviously he'll probably play third base a lot as well. I don't really know necessarily where he fits, if he fits an everyday role. He certainly could catch as well. Although all of his tweets kind of make it seem like he just wants to play shortstop. So I don't know if that is what he will always do, but certainly at least they have another guy on the roster that can catch, which is always good to have. Obviously, catchers are really, they go through a grind throughout the season. So I'm not sure where he factors in because obviously you still have Anthony Rizzo that's going to play first base. You got DJ LeMahieu. You got Gleyber Torres. Now you got Josh Donaldson. Do you DH Josh Donaldson and not have him play the field? Do you DH Gleyber Torres? I've heard that kind of thrown around. What do you do? Obviously, you got Giancarlo Stanton, who, is usually your DH. So do you move one of those guys out to the outfield? Do you put Isaiah Kiner-Falefa on the bench? I think he's too good to be on the bench all the time, but, you never really know. So we'll see kind of how that fits over the next couple of weeks, couple of months. And then obviously also today, the Yankees also traded Luke Voit to the San Diego Padres. So obviously Luke Voit going to get a fresh start in San Diego. I think that's a good pickup for them. I think at the very least it gives them another option other than Eric Hosmer, who basically is just getting paid to be not great. So hopefully Luke Voit can carve out a little bit more playing time in San Diego than he did in New York over this past year. And then obviously, they nicknamed San Diego Slam Diego, and Luke Voit can certainly hit the ball over the fence. So we will see how that, I think it's a great fit for them. We'll see how it ends up fitting. Okay. On to the Washington Nationals. They signed designated hitter Nelson Cruz, second baseman Cesar Hernandez, shortstop Ehire Adrianza, and pitcher Steve Cishek. Nothing really super flashy here. Obviously, Nelson Cruz, good power bat, getting up there in age, kind of showed it a little bit last year toward the end of the year with the Rays. And then Cesar Hernandez, underrated second baseman, always has been, never has been a very flashy guy. Last year showed a little bit more power than he had in the past. That average on base percentage dropped a little bit, but the power went up. Although obviously when he was traded to the Chicago White Sox, he certainly struggled for most of his time there. But we will see kind of how that fits. Obviously the Nationals are also one of those teams that are rebuilding, so certainly no harm there. Adrianza is, he's a nice bench bat, can really play everywhere. He's listed as a shortstop, but can pretty much play every position on the field. Good bench pickup for them. And then Steve Cishek, obviously another bullpen piece for the Nationals. Blue Jays. I said that I was talking most about, the good teams early on. I lied. The Blue Jays. Wow, what an offseason. And they're not done yet. They're in the conversation to trade for Jose Ramirez. So we will see if they end up getting even more talent going over there. But a big offseason for the Blue Jays. So they signed Kevin Gausman to a 3-year contract, who obviously was getting Cy Young votes over in the National League last year for the Giants. Had a huge breakout year, so hopefully he'll be able to carry that over to the Blue Jays. Although he did pitch for the Orioles a few years ago, so he does have experience in the AL East, and it was not great. So hopefully he will be able to figure it out this go-round. They also signed pitcher Yusei Kikuchi, who obviously, I think if he's going to slot in to be their fifth starter, I think that's a great fifth starter for the Blue Jays. He's a guy that has the potential to be a number 3, maybe even a number 2 guy when he's on. But obviously he's not on enough. He's had injury concerns, and last year he really pitched. He just dominated for like 3/4 of the year, and then the last, maybe like right after the All-Star break, he just nosedived. I mean, it was like he forgot how to pitch sometimes. I mean, it was really, really frustrating to watch. So we'll see how that translates to the Blue Jays, getting a new start for Kikuchi. So we will see how that translates. They also signed pitcher Yimi Garcia to add to their bullpen. That's the one weakness that the Blue Jays have. Their bullpen is not that good, to be honest. Not great. And then they also, the big move that the Blue Jays made, they traded for third baseman Matt Chapman. So the Oakland Athletics, one of the teams that really has not done and brought in anybody, to be honest, of any worth, but they traded away Matt Olson and Matt Chapman. And, this is one of those reasons why, a lot of people don't like the fact that, there's, revenue sharing and they don't want increased revenue sharing, but this is why you do revenue sharing. It's because Oakland Athletics don't make enough money to keep players like Matt Chapman and Matt Olson. They just don't. I mean, to re-sign guys like that, you need $25-30 million a year, and if the Athletics paid that much money, they would not be able to keep any other players on their roster. Like, they would just be paying luxury tax after luxury tax after luxury tax after luxury tax. It just would not be good. So they pretty much have to just barely make the playoffs every year with shrewd picks and good pitching, and then trade everybody away after a couple of years. Like, that's just pretty much what they have to do, which is really sad, because I think if Oakland and their coaching and their front office, with as good as they are at, finding talent for a lot less money and developing guys, I think if honestly they were given some run, and they were given a little bit of money, and they were able to re-sign some of these stars, I think they could win a World Series or two. I really do, but we're never going to find out, obviously, unfortunately. It's been rumored that the Oakland Athletics, they might move. They might get bought out. Don't know if that's going to end up happening, but they just are not making any money, and so these things happen. They have to happen. But back to the Blue Jays, huge pickup for them. Obviously, your third baseman, it's usually going to be Kevin Biggio and also Vlad Guerrero Jr. Now you could put Matt Chapman at third, and he's, For what it's worth, I think the best defensive third baseman in baseball right now. Yes, I am aware that Nolan Arenado exists. I think that Nolan is just a little bit older and a little bit past his defensive prime, to where I think Chapman is just a hair better now. Obviously, Nolan was better in his prime than Chapman has been in his prime, but, I think it's close. I think you could definitely still make the argument that Nolan is better, but to me, at least in the American League, Chapman is the best defensive third baseman for sure. So that really helps over there. Obviously, he's a good hitter as well. So that really anchors the hot corner for them. You obviously you have Bo Bichette at short. You could move Kevin Biggio back to second. That lineup is just going to be absolutely filthy. And then obviously, as I said earlier, they are in the mix to trade for Jose Ramirez. If they put Jose Ramirez at second, then that lineup, man. George Springer, Vlad Guerrero, Jose Ramirez, Matt Chapman, Teoscar Hernandez, Randall Grichuk, obviously Lourdes Gurriel, it's just going to be a frightening AL East this year. The Red Sox will come in fourth if the Blue Jays end up really, solidifying that. I think the Red Sox, going to tell you right now for free, Red Sox overperformed a lot last year. They're not getting better this year. I don't think that they're going to repeat what they did last year. They could, I guess, but I just don't foresee it. I just think they're going to end up being third or fourth this year. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I don't have a ton of faith in because, again, on paper, it didn't make sense what happened. Any Red Sox fan who has a brain in their head will tell you it made no sense what happened last year. I sat there and I was like, I honest to God think that we might come in last again. I did. And obviously that didn't happen, and I was very thrilled that it didn't happen, and we somehow made it to the ALCS, but on paper, it just doesn't look good. And I think that and you guess what? That's fine. We are in a stage where Shane Bloom is trying to rebuild our farm system and build that way, because if the Red Sox have a great farm system and are developing guys, young guys on their team that are controllable, you can then go and re-sign, sign these big free agents and end up winning another World Series like we did in 2018. When you had young guys like Xander Bogaerts, guys like Rafael Devers, guys like Andrew Benintendi, guys like Mookie Betts, guys like Jackie Bradley, all came in our system, and then you could sign your big free agents like a JD Martinez. And then your big free agent pitchers like Chris Sale, David Price. So, it ends up working out well, but certainly you need that development, and we certainly need more pitching, although I will talk about the Red Sox moves at the end of the video. But, nonetheless, moving on to the Twins. Obviously, I talked about they traded Mitch Garver to the Texas Rangers for shortstop/catcher Isaiah Kiner-Falefa and a minor league pitcher, and then immediately traded Isaiah Kiner-Falefa to the Twins along with to the Yankees, along with Josh Donaldson for a package of Gary Sanchez and Gio Urshela. So that's pretty much the only move of importance that the Twins have made, and I've already talked about it a little bit, but I'll talk about it from the Twins side. Obviously, Josh Donaldson's getting up there in age. He's got a big contract. You traded away Mitch Garver. So obviously, you wanted a guy like Gary Sanchez. I think Gary Sanchez isn't quite as good as Mitch Garver. I think Mitch Garver is a little bit more consistent. Obviously, injury concerns have been, Mitch Garver's kryptonite, as it is with a lot of catchers, especially good hitting catchers. But we'll see kind of how that develops over the next couple of years, and see if Gary Sanchez ends up sticking around in Minnesota. The Giants, they signed, they had a big offseason too. They signed pitcher Carlos Rodon. They signed Jock Peterson. They also signed pitchers Matt Boyd, Alex Wood, and Jakob Junis. So big offseason for the Giants. Obviously, they lost a couple of good pitchers. They re-signed Anthony Descalfani as well. They lost Kevin Gausman. Obviously, he was their ace last year, but you brought in, Carlos Rodon to kind of fill that spot. I'm not sure if Rodon is a good one-for-one switch, obviously with his injury concerns. We'll see if that ends up working out for them. And then Matt Boyd, Alex Wood, Jakob Junis, great pitching depth there. Matt Boyd has been wildly inconsistent for the Detroit Tigers, but when he is on, he is on. I mean, he is nigh unhittable when he's on. The problem is he's very rarely ever on. Alex Wood, obviously kind of the opposite of a Matt Boyd. He's pretty consistent, but he's never really been flashy. He's never been an ace caliber guy. And then Jakob Junis just kind of fell out of favor in Kansas City. We'll see if he ends up becoming a bullpen guy or if he just becomes a depth kind of guy. We will see, but certainly, a bunch of good pitchers there. Obviously, 4 good ones for San Francisco. They wanted some more pitching depth, and they got it. And then obviously Jock Peterson played very well in the postseason for the Braves. A guy very famously crushes righties, doesn't hit so well against lefties. Getting up there in age, obviously I believe he's 30 or 31 now. So, he's getting up there. But good signing for the Giants. They needed to replace Alex Dickerson, who left, so they certainly were able to do that. Brewers, they sign outfielder Andrew McCutchen and pitcher Brad Boxberger. Brad Boxberger, not going to talk too much about. That's really just a depth signing for them. He might end up carving out a role in their bullpen. But then Andrew McCutchen, obviously, won an MVP a few years ago. Getting up there in age, though, slowing down a little bit. More becoming a platoon player than he is an everyday guy. But still a great leader in that locker room for the Brewers, who are still looking to kind of, climb that postseason ladder and really solidify themselves as a playoff caliber team. They have the pitching rotation to do it. We will see if they end up, really breaking through there in that division. The Houston Astros, they re-signed Justin Verlander in one of their bigger, probably their biggest move of the offseason for another year, so we'll see how he bounces back from a year of injury. They also signed first baseman / utility Nico Goodrum, and they also signed pitcher Hector Neris. Neris, I think, is very underrated. I don't think he gets as much credit as he deserves. I think he's been a pretty solid pitcher for the Philadelphia Phillies for a number of years. I think he'll do great out there in Houston. I think he'll really help anchor the back end of that bullpen. And then Nico Goodrum, another guy that's decently underrated, signed a $2 million contract for a guy that can play most of the infield positions. He originally was listed as a shortstop. Last year he played mostly first base, and now he's listed as a first baseman. But he can play multiple positions. He's a good bench bat. So certainly a decent pickup for the Astros. The Phillies, I previously mentioned, they signed pitcher Brad Hand. They also signed Corey Knebel, and they also, in their biggest signing of the offseason, signed DH/outfielder Kyle Schwarber. Schwarber obviously had an all-star year last year, hit very, very well, hit a lot of home runs, took that average and on-base percentage up, ended up really, really helping out the Red Sox in the postseason. We definitely could not have gone as far as we did without him. Certainly very appreciative of his time in Boston. Definitely just couldn't afford to keep him. He signed for almost $20 million a year. So certainly just wasn't in the cards. But great player. And now with the universal DH, he'll be worth a lot. He's obviously, this offseason showed he's worth a lot more now because everybody has a DH. So that's probably where he will end up slotting in for the Phillies as the designated hitter. And maybe he'll play maybe he'll play a little bit of outfield when necessary. The Cardinals didn't really do much. They just signed, the only thing that I could find that they did this offseason was sign Nick Whitgren. So a decent pickup for their bullpen there. Not really much else to talk about. The Royals, the only thing that I saw that they did was they signed Zach Greinke to a 1-year, $13 million contract. And I know I haven't talked a lot about, people's contracts, so why would I just talk about a $13 million contract for Zach Greinke? It's because it's a wild overpay. That's why. Zach Greinke showed last year he's not the same pitcher that he once was. He honestly fell out of favor in Houston. Think about that. Zach Greinke was barely in the playoff rotation for the Houston Astros last year without Justin Verlander. So, I mean, it's just a huge fall off of a cliff for Zach Greinke. $13 million, I think, is just a massive overpay. Though he did start out his career and won a Cy Young Award in Kansas City. So certainly not a terrible, terrible signing. I think it's really nice when a guy goes back to the team that he ended up having a lot of success with. So certainly that's a nice story, but I'm not sure what they are looking to accomplish with that. As in the Kansas City Royals, because they're still rebuilding. I'm not really sure what the strategy is there, but you never really know. Maybe they're gonna trade him at the trade deadline and get some prospects out of him. Who knows? The Rockies. All right. So how I said earlier about the Reds that I'm gonna be nice? I don't think I'm gonna be nice with this. So Chris Bryant signed with the Rockies. Now, he signed for a 7-year, $182 million contract. That's not an overpay. Chris Bryant is a great player for sure. Where my problem lies is you had homegrown talents in Trevor Story and Nolan Arenado. You are paying the St. Louis Cardinals $50 million to not have Nolan Arenado on your team because you don't think your team's in a position to compete and you didn't want to have that much money on the books. Okay, that's stupid, but okay. I guess sure, if that's what you feel like you need to do. Then you don't trade Trevor Story, so now by your logic, we traded away Nolan because we're not in a good position. We need prospects. But we're just going to let Trevor Story walk in free agency and we're not going to trade him to a contender to get something out of him knowing he's not going to come back. So you don't do that. And then you sign Chris Bryant for a contract that's not too dissimilar to what you were paying Nolan Arenado. Obviously, it's for a lot less. It's not like a $40 million a year contract like Nolan Arenado was having, although it's not that much less, honestly. What are you doing in Colorado? Listen, I have friends that are Colorado Rockies fans. Friends, plural. I didn't think I'd ever meet one. I have multiple friends. I have like 4 that are Rockies fans. If any of you see this portion of the video, please explain to me what your front office is doing. Maybe you're as clueless as I am. Maybe you are sitting there thinking, I don't know what the heck they're doing. But why? I mean, why didn't you just keep Nolan? Why didn't you just keep Story? If anything, why didn't you trade Story and then get Chris Bryant for significantly less average money so that you had the prospects for those guys and Chris Bryant? You didn't do that. What are you doing? For Chris Bryant, I don't understand this move either. I don't like to ever think that a guy goes to a place just to pad his stats, but that's what I think's going on here. I mean, clearly it's not to win a World Series. Clearly it's not to go back to where you're from. I don't think Chris Bryant's from Colorado. Could be wrong, I guess. I don't think he's going back home. It's clearly not to win any awards, because if Chris Bryant wins the MVP in Colorado, they're going to be in last place. Like, that will be... He will have had to have had like a 400 batting average throughout the whole year and hit like 50 bombs to even be in the conversation for MVP when you play for a team as bad as the Rockies. Now, is that right? No, but that's just how it is. Let's be honest with ourselves. So, he's probably not going to win any more MVPs, especially considering the mass amounts of talent in the NL. I mean, just Juan Soto, Acuna, Trey Turner, Cody Bellinger, Mookie Betts, just all these guys. Bryce Harper, who won the MVP last year. Christian Yelich, who I still think has something there. Obviously, he hasn't been to MVP level last year. And then obviously Cody Bellinger hit like 110 last year. But he's won MVP before, so you never really know. And then obviously you've got all your pitchers. Obviously guys like Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burns, Max Scherzer, Jacob deGrom. All these guys have a way better chance of winning the MVP than Chris Bryant, especially now that he's on the Rockies. So he's clearly not doing it for awards. He's clearly not doing it to win a World Series. Is he doing it for money? Maybe. But I genuinely believe that somebody else could have offered him more money. Probably. I mean, maybe they didn't. Maybe he literally was just like, these guys are paying me the most money, I'm going to go there. But I think he's going there because of course. I think he's going there because his batting average, his power numbers will look better, and he's trying to make a Hall of Fame case. Because he's got a championship, he's got an MVP, he just wants to pad his stats. That's what I think's happening, and I hate saying that because I feel like such a jerk saying things like that because I don't have any proof to back that up. But, I mean, would you be surprised? I mean, it kind of looks like that, right? If he'd gone anywhere else, even if he'd gone to the Orioles, I'd be like, well, they probably just offered him the most money. But it's not like Camden Yards. I mean, it's not a gigantic field, but it's not like Camden Yards has the reputation for balls flying out of the yard at a significantly higher rate than every other MLB ballpark, like Coors does. I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading too much into it, but that's the last team I'll talk about before I talk about the Red Sox. So now, last thing I'll do is I'll talk about the Red Sox moves this offseason. Not a ton of major moves. So they have signed nothing but pitchers as far as I can tell. I did not see any other signings in terms of position players for the Red Sox. They signed nothing but pitchers, which is good because they need pitchers. That's exactly what their weakness has been over the last couple of years. And now, obviously, with Chris Sale with a stress fracture in his ribs, he will not be there for opening day. We also lost Eduardo Rodriguez. So certainly, the pitching staff not looking great right now. So we needed some pitchers, and we got some. They signed Rich Hill, who is at least 900 years old, but still killing it. I mean, he's still a good pitcher when he pitches. I mean, he doesn't stay healthy, but when he pitches, he's not that bad. So, obviously, Rich Hill had a troubled career and then went to the Red Sox, kind of revitalized his career, ended up going to the Dodgers, and obviously has been there for years and years and years. And then last year he was with the Mets, he was with the Rays. Now back with the Red Sox. So I think that's pretty cool. I didn't realize that he'd still be pitching at, 930 years old, but good for him. I hope he stays healthy, and I hope that he can do something great with us because I love Rich Hill. I think it's a great, he's had a fantastic career. I mean, if somebody could have a quarter of Rich Hill's career, I'm sure they'd take it. I mean, it's crazy how good of a career he's had. Also signed James Paxton to a contract. If I remember correctly, this is one of the stranger contracts I've seen. It was a 1-year deal, but a 2-year club option. And I don't know if James Paxton is going to be ready to play this year, maybe at all. He might be ready, towards the end of the year. But obviously, he had some injuries and battled a lot of injuries in the past. And, when he was with the Mariners, he was really good. When he was with the Yankees, he was really bad. I think he had like a 16-game stretch where he gave up a run in the first inning. It was something ridiculous like that. It might not have been 16, but he was just giving up runs in the first inning like it was going out of style when he was pitching for the Yankees. He just could not get through the first inning. Hopefully that doesn't happen with the Red Sox. But obviously, if it works out, he's still got some good stuff. He still throws pretty hard, still got good breaking stuff, still could at least be of value being a third or fourth starter for you. So I think it's not a bad signing, especially, in a long-term play. If it ends up working out, you get a 2-year club option that you can accept. You'll have him for 2 more years. So certainly great. Also signed Michael Wacha. Man, I remember, I don't know if you guys remember this. Do you remember when Michael Wacha was like dominating in the playoffs for the Cardinals back in 2013 when they went to the World Series? I mean, he was the guy I was most afraid of facing in the World Series. Like, he was just dominant, and man, it feels like an absolute lifetime ago that it was like that. He has not had a bad career by any means, but certainly never developed that ace caliber stuff, not even really close to it. He's jumped around a whole bunch of different teams, played for the Rays last year. Actually, I watched him pitch in person, which was a nice treat. Michael Wacha, another guy, we need starters, man. I mean, that seems a little harsh to say about Michael Wacha. He's not a bad player by any means. He's average. I mean, he's, maybe even slightly below average. I don't know, but, he's fine. But we need pitching. So, take what you can get. We also have signed a couple of bullpen pieces, a couple of lefties, Matt Strahm and Jake Diekman. Strahm pitching a lot for the Padres over the last few years, and then Diekman for the Athletics. If I remember correctly, Diekman was that guy that was pitching like every day for the Athletics. It felt like he was out there a lot. Good pickups for the Red Sox there to help out that bullpen. We'll see what else the Red Sox try to do. Obviously, they've been in the running for a guy like Freddie Freeman. They've been in the running for a guy like Trevor Story. They still could get Trevor Story. I don't see him fitting, considering he has said very publicly that he does not want to move positions. He would have to play second base, or Xander Bogaerts would have to play second base. And I think if Xander Bogaerts plays second base, he's going to opt out in 2022 and not want to come back. Which I don't want, because Xander Bogaerts is wonderful and I love him. Please never leave. Everybody else is leaving. No. But it is what it is. We'll see if any of that kind of materializes, but I guess you never know. I guess you could be on Correa. I don't really want him. He's too overpriced, and I just don't. I don't see him fitting our rebuild. Gonna be honest, I just don't. I mean, he's a fantastic player. You don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not saying anything bad about Carlos Correa as a player. He's fantastic. He's one of the best defenders in the MLB. He's a great hitter. He's a great locker room leader. He plays with a lot of passion and emotion, which I love out of a player. So fantastic. I think he'd be great on every team. But I just don't see him where the Red Sox are right now. I don't see him fitting. Again, if we did sign him, he'd have to move positions, or Xander would have to move positions. I'm guessing if Correa signed, Xander would move positions, because Correa is just such a fantastic defensive shortstop. And Xander, not as good of a defensive shortstop. A lot of people say he's like horrible. I don't see how he's horrible. Like, I've watched him a lot. I mean, he's not great. Like, he's not like amazing, but he's not like the worst, Like, he's fine defensively at shortstop, which for what he provides on offense, I'll take fine. Every day of the week, I will take average defense. So, anyway, that is going to be all for me today. We will see kind of how the Red Sox season develops, but spring training is here, and this is it. I am done recording until Monday. I am wiped, It's been a lot of work this week, but I would do it in a heart. I do it again in a heartbeat. It has been so much fun to do all this research. Any more updates on free agency that I come across, I will talk about on Monday, whether it's in the MLB, whether it's in the NFL, and we will hopefully get back to more of a normal type podcast next week, where I'll go through current events, I'll go through Tough Talk, and then I'll talk about the Boston, the Boston Hour, or the All Things Boston. So hopefully things will get a little bit more back to normal next week. But again, that's going to be all for me today, guys. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.